Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. My name is Scott Bowen. I'm the Chief of the Lebanon, Tennessee Police Department. I'm also the leader of the team that will be assessing the Enfield Police Department over the next several days. I would now like to introduce the other member of the assessment team, Sergeant Rick Benz of the Lebanon, Ohio Police Department. The Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies Incorporated of Gainesville, Virginia, has authorized us to assess the Enfield Police Department, which is a candidate for reaccreditation. The Enfield Police Department has voluntarily contracted with the Commission to work towards reaccreditation and thereby continue to demonstrate its professional excellence. When the agency originally entered this process, it received the Commission Standards Manual, which contains 480 standards encompassing all facets of law enforcement management, operations, and support functions. The Commission accredited this agency in 1996 after determining it had demonstrated its compliance with all applicable standards. The agency's proof of compliance are on file at the Enfield Police Department. Since then, the agency has attempted to maintain those standards. Our responsibility as assessors for the Commission is to revisit the agency and verify that it has remained in compliance since it was last reaccredited. Carl Safraza, the Chief of Police of the Enfield Police Department, has appointed Officer Tom Pierce as the Accreditation Manager to oversee the reaccreditation process for this agency. In accordance with the Commission's public information policy, the agency's candidacy for reaccreditation has been publicized in this area, and the agency has arranged for this public hearing. The public hearing is intended to provide interested citizens or employees of the agency an opportunity to address this assessment team concerning the agency. Any comments that you make will be considered by us as we review the agency and will also be reported back to the Commission. If you wish to supplement your verbal comments with a written statement or exhibits, you may present them to our team at the time you speak, or you may send them to the Commission where they will be reviewed when the agency is presented for reaccreditation at a formal Commission conference. If you wish to address the Commission, I will be happy to provide that information. If you wish to mail something to the Commission, I will be happy after the hearing to provide you with that address. At the beginning of the meeting, a sign-in sheet was made available in the rear of this room. Those of you who indicated a desire to speak will be given an opportunity to address us in a few moments. We ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you wish to speak to any member of the Commission staff, you may reach them at the telephone number 703-352-4225. The Commission staff representative for this agency is Steve Mitchell. You may also email your comments to kalia@kalia.org, placing the agency name in the subject line. Again, if anyone needs that phone number or that email address, please let me know and I'll make sure to give it to you. I would like to remind you that this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be forwarded to the Commission for its review. Are there any questions from the members of the audience that we can answer before we begin? Tom, if you'll call the first speaker, please.
Mr. Len Besthoff. Good evening, I'm Len Besthoff. I'm a reporter at WFSB TV out of Rocky Hill. I've been a reporter here for 10 years, and I've covered the Enfield Police Department quite a bit over the years. And I've had very good interactions with Chief Safraza and other members of the police department when it comes to helping us on stories. The things that we, of course, look for predominantly are access, and that doesn't always mean a television interview, but just that, frankly, means information, and not just information, but information quickly and expeditiously, which is always an issue, especially in our business now that we're 24/7 with the web. When Chief Safraza cannot get to us, he's very good about delegating to other officers to make sure that we can be helped on the weekends or the off hours, if not just with information, with actual on-camera interviews. Also, as far as video opportunities go, which is of course important in our business, a lot of police departments you'll see, they will back us way off a scene. And this department, I think, has a very good understanding of how far we can be put close to a scene without being so close that we're endangering ourselves or getting in the way of officers and EMS and fire department folks who are trying to do their job. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like me to add or any questions you all have. That's pretty much where I'm at.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chief Earl Provencher.
Good evening. My name is Earl Provencher, and I am the Fire Chief of the North Thompsonville Fire Department here in Enfield, as well as an Enfield resident. I come before you this evening to speak in favor of reaccreditation for our Enfield Police Department. As I know you are aware, it's absolutely imperative that emergency service organizations work as a team during an incident, which will afford the best results for a successful outcome of that incident. Our firefighters work with police officers as well as our EMS force on a daily basis and on many incidents. We also work as a team on the not so often significant incidents that all of our communities do experience. On many events, our command staff becomes a unified command, which certainly promotes a successful incident outcome and resolution. In order for this unified command and for our unified personnel to work together better, we also train together. This allows police personnel to understand how we work and our priorities, as well as us to understand the police operation and priorities. Most often, they are alike, but it can also be very different due to the nature of our work, so this is very important. The police administration meets with the fire and EMS administration at least monthly, and depending on activity, often as needed, so that we can support each other for the ultimate goal, which is service to the public and the safety of our emergency personnel. In conclusion, I realize my remarks were brief, but that should not be in any manner mistaken for anything but my sincere support for this reaccreditation. I know you have many people to listen to this evening, and if you need further testimony from me about the great things done by or the professionalism of our police department, I left my information, and any member of the police department, administration, or officer peers can get in touch with me, and I'd be most willing to further discuss some of these great things. I hope that your stay and visit in Enfield has been a pleasant one, and I wish you a safe return to your respective communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Linda Carlin.
Good evening. I got stuck in the presidential motorcade, so on 91, or I would have been here a little sooner. I'm here on behalf of the Police Accreditation Coalition. I'm the treasurer of our PAC and also record supervisor, accreditation manager for the Farmington Police Department. Chief Sbrazo has embraced the accreditation process throughout the years in his department. By advocating for the CLIA accreditation, he has enhanced the law enforcement profession in his own department and improved law enforcement services to the people of the community. He supports the PAC in their efforts to guide other agencies that want to seek accreditation by allowing his officers to take part in the PAC and the mock assessments. Lieutenant Kazalauskas and Officer Pierce, and I hope I pronounced their names correctly, are professional advocates for CLIA accreditation in all they do. They've consistently demonstrated compliance with the standards and are seen as a model agency for those seeking accreditation. As an officer of the PAC, CLIA assessor, and accreditation manager for many years, I have every confidence in the leadership of the department and the personnel. As a colleague and fellow professional, I hold them in the highest esteem. And I have a copy of my comments, so you didn't have to write everything down. So I would just like to say the PAC supports them, and they're a great agency and very helpful to everyone in the process.
Thank you.
Very much, Linda.
And also have a safe trip home.
Thank you.
Cynthia Mangini.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for your time in coming to Enfield. I speak as a resident of Enfield and also council person. I'm serving my 8th term, 16 years. And I speak in favor of our Enfield Police Department for the reaccreditation. I have the privilege and the honor of serving our town on the CCM, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities Board of Directors. I also serve an advisory council for the National League of Cities. So I have other avenues where I have exposure to other police issues, etc. And I have to tell you that I'm very, very proud of the work and of the security and of the time and devotion that our PD provides our citizens here in Enfield. Also, you know, with the tragedy at Newtown, our PD has been in the forefront of security, looking at school issues, hardening, making our children safe, in addition to all the other work that they are assigned on a daily basis. And I'm very, very proud and honored to be a resident of Enfield, and I can't speak any more highly of our PD. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Margaret Jedziniak and Coralie Jones.
Would you please allow me to stand?
Absolutely, ma'am.
Thank you. Margaret Jedziniak, Abbey Road, Enfield. I am a lifelong resident of Enfield and always had an interest in the well-being of the town. The complexity of the town and its residents changed over the years. The times that we are in, many citizens are under a great deal of stress and discontent with their lives. Many times this leads to domestic disputes and other inappropriate actions. One can tell how busy the officers are, as well as how dangerous their job is by reading the articles in the newspapers. Also, with the prisons in town, they have some out-of-town visitors who create additional problems for the town. I listen to the scanner, and they get numerous calls spread out from all over the town. They respond to accidents, criminal activities, and health issues all at one time. Now they have an even more pressing issue with keeping our children safe in our schools. The chief has been instrumental in developing a plan to help protect the students. From personal experience over the past year, I have had some health issues and needed help. Many times the police officer was first on the scene. Their assistance was greatly appreciated. The Enfield Police Department does an outstanding job in protecting the citizens of Enfield and deserves to receive this accreditation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I'm her daughter, Coralie Jones, and I've been helping her through her recuperation. And I too want to, several times she needed medical assistance, and the police officer was the first on the scene. And they were always extremely professional, very calming, very, making us feel secure. And as we waited, because we would have to wait for the ambulance to arrive, and it was very, very helpful, them being there and how they conducted themselves, and we appreciate that. And they do deserve to be their reaccreditation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Kinsley.
Good afternoon. Tom Kinsler, 359 Washington Road, resident and member of the Enfield Town Council. First, I wanted to thank you for coming today. I know you probably do this all over the country, and nothing is better than checking on our ways of doing things and helping to improve them. So I appreciate your involvement in this process. I wanted to share with you the feeling of Enfield. Enfield is a town of roughly 45,000 plus citizens. It is, by most of our citizenry, considered a small town in the way it feels, in the way it operates. But the reality is, over the past several decades, it's much like a big city. It is a very large area for our police department to cover. It consists of areas that have increased drug, other criminal activities. So it is really a police department that is a hometown police department that is able to do a fantastic job in a city-type crime environment from time to time. Nowhere have I ever been, and I grew up in the city of Springfield, just north of here, and you can walk into the Enfield Police Department and you can sit down with a sergeant or a captain or a lieutenant or the chief and have a conversation, get some guidance, get some help for any resident, no matter who you are. In this past year, we've had several events I'm sure people will discuss with you and you'll learn about, where the Enfield Police Department became proactive instead of reactive. Too many times across the country we read that a police department reacts to a situation and they react appropriately and they make changes. In Enfield, I've seen time and time again on my short year and a half on the town council and then before that, where they think ahead. We're going to have an issue in town with this thing that's going to happen. We are going to get ahead on security in our schools. We're going to train our officers for active shooter programs. Someone mentioned the prisons and the liaison between the Enfield Police Department and the prisons. So we have a diverse set of challenges, and we have, in my opinion, the friendliest and the most professional police department I have ever seen. And for a living, just so you know, I do insurance programs for municipalities and for state governments, and I have the highest regard for our state police, and I would put the Enfield Police Department side by side with the state police and far ahead of many of the other municipalities that have good police departments that I get to experience. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Charles Grasso.
Good evening. I'm going to read a letter from the Emergency Medical Services Chief, Gary Womokley. I'm the captain that works directly for him. Chief Womokley couldn't be here tonight. He's out of state, and he asked me to read the following. He has had the good fortune of being able to work with the Enfield Police Department in a number of capacities for close to 20 years. These range from providing their local medical oversight and training and education and as first responders and EMS care providers staffing ambulances, as well as the state EMS director in approving medically related training programs, ongoing certifications for individual officers, and the license certification to be state-approved EMS responders. Chief Womokley now serves as the EMS chief for the town of Enfield. As it states, it is indeed his privilege to share with you the continuous professionalism as well as the genuine striving to serve the public that is evident every day from the Enfield Police Department. As the town's EMS provider agency, we work closely with the police administration. We work closely with the officers and street-level supervisors on a daily, if not hourly basis. She states he cannot offer anything other than high praise for the staff of the police department. The interaction with police officers is consistently professional. Actions witnessed by EMS staff are said to be ones of acting in the best interests of individuals they encounter, assuring public safety, including an individual who may be being arrested at the time. He states always, and he means always, interactions and working with the police administration is one of a collegial environment where they strive to the same endpoint. That could be improved methods of managing a specific circumstance, improving staff safety, cooperative training, or enhancements of knowledge base. He finds that in sharing of ideas and, whenever possible, reduction of redundancy a common goal. As the assessment team and the residents of Enfield are aware, the police are the town's first responder agency. EMS provides ongoing and enhanced paramedic level care and transportation of the patient. Oftentimes, that the first responder is critical to a positive outcome the patient. Time and time again, officers responding to the scene of a medical aid not only provide the initial care and reassurance to the patient and their family, they also will continue to provide additional people power as needed to ensure the continuum of quality patient care. The Enfield Police Department takes this role very seriously, and with the cooperative training, citizens and visitors are assured of dedicated and properly trained first responders. Most recently, the Enfield Police Department and the Emergency Medical Services trained and drilled on a response to an active shooter event. Such exercises increase departmental awareness and increase collaborative, seamless interaction when a crisis erupts. That is not the time to find out that there are issues between agencies. The police department has additionally worked with EMS on management of potentially violent patients. This has provided invaluable tools, tips, and awareness to better handle these types of patients and increase our ability to remain safe and have greater appreciation of how we should best interact to keep the patient as well as ourselves safe. In closing, he states he hopes that he has painted a picture of the department that is dedicated to community service, has public safety and protection at the forefront, as well as a strong willingness to be proactive and work with other departments for the betterment of the town of Enfield as a whole. And it is an honor to provide this written testimony, and again, I'm sorry, he states that he is sorry that he could not be here to offer his comments in person. And I must state, as my position now is captain with EMS, and after a career with the Enfield Police Department, I echo his sentiments.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you, sir.
Francis Valenta.
Welcome to Enfield.
Thank you, sir.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
My name is Fran Walenta, although I live in Suffield. Most of my career has been here in Enfield, and I was a facilities operations manager for a large corporation as well as an agency. And just a little different touch, I guess, is the fact that, you know, over those period of 40-plus years in this community, I've witnessed many chiefs and many operations going back several, and the bar just keeps going up. And I think that I know that, you know, right now what we're seeing today with Carl and his staff, you know, we're seeing that bar to another level. But over the period of years in my career, we have needed the response of the team to be there for EMS issues, for accidents. We had 40 vehicles at one time. So, and a lot of younger drivers and maybe older drivers like me, but there were many, many incidents along the way. Very helpful, very easy to do whatever they need to do, realizing the people that we were transporting. They were there for when we needed extra protection if we had any kind of entry problems or situations and we needed some special care. Just a phone call, say, hey, you know, would you? Absolutely, you know, what time, when do you need us, and we're there. They couldn't be more helpful. So that would sum up the staff that I see it as of today, and they do a great job. Many thanks, and thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Louis Reality.
Welcome to Enfield.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Tough time to be a police officer in this country. And I want to just say right off the bat, yes to accreditation. Get that out of the way. And I want to personally thank every one of those police officers that pull into that Elm Street department every day. And they do one hell of a job. I wish that every night when their shifts are done, they get to go home and see their loved one. And I can't thank them enough. They're a great bunch of police officers. I'd also like to thank the dispatchers, because a lot of times they get overlooked. And when we pick up that phone, those are the people we first engage with. And I can't say enough. I don't think they've ever had a better bunch of dispatchers than they have right now. And I know that because, like my friend Margaret, I listen to a scanner many hours of the day. And it's really something. This town has changed a lot. This police department is busier than I've ever imagined it could be, and it's something to listen to. One of the things that I think this department has some big challenges, and I know that can be part of this, is the number of protective custody calls that have been. I started noticing it listening to the scanner, all these protective custody calls. And I guess protective custody is where somebody either threatens themselves or somebody else. Police officer just dispatched. He fills out paperwork, sends the people to the hospital. So I started hearing all of these calls, and I contacted the chief, who you can contact, pick up the phone, and he gets back to you. He gave me a number at that time. It was from January 1st to about the third week of February. There was 70 protective custody at that time. Tonight I have a new number, 141 protective custody cases in Enfield since January 1st. That is unbelievable. They come from the schools, JFK Middle School, the other schools, the elementary schools, the high schools, a lot of it from downtown Thompsonville, but throughout the town. That is 100. That means our ambulance is going out of town, our police officer tied up. I think this is a big, big challenge for our police department. Also, another big challenge I see is the neighborhood that sits directly behind you, gentlemen. I grew up there. There's some people in this room who grew up down there, including the chief and Tommy, and it's a changing environment down there. It's a lot more dangerous than it's ever been. Our police are spending an exorbitant amount of time in Thompsonville, sometimes to the point where I think some of us are kind of getting gypped because there's so much energy being put down there. They handle it in a professional way. There's a lot of dangerous calls, and I'm telling you, people should get, well, here's the problem. The new police scanner, the new ban they're going on is a $500 scanner. Mine's going to be thrown out the window pretty soon. It's going to be useless. But anyways, if you don't think that this police department is active, you just pick up that scanner and listen. These guys bounce from call to call to call, and they do it in a professional manner, but it almost scares you sometimes that, to me, sometimes I think they're pushed to the limits. They're going from, they don't even have time to breathe sometimes. Sometimes they're stacked, and I hear the dispatcher will say, are you all set? Are you all set? Because there's another call waiting. I'd like to see more police officers in town, to tell you the truth. But I'll leave it at that, and I'm a little unnerved about the situation with the protective custody, and I know that not much you can do about it, but I wanted to bring it out tonight because it is a challenge for this police department. It's taking a lot of time, and so is in Thompsonville, and it's unfortunate that Thompsonville has gone the way it's gone, because those of us who grew up there knew it as, I kind of say Mayfield, or leave it to Beaverland. It was a beautiful place, and now it's up to the police department to pick up the pieces down there. They're out there cleaning up the mess, and it's unfortunate, and it's dangerous to our police officers, and like I said, accreditation, yes, these guys do a great job, and I want to thank them personally, and thank you very much for your time, and have a safe trip.
Thank you, sir.
Jack Sheridan.
Hi, my name's Jack Sheridan. I live at 7 Buchanan Road. I've lived in town over 50 years. This is a very accessible police department from call down. I mean, we feel welcome when we walk in there. We can say whatever it is that's on our mind, ask our questions. And just recently, because I had read in the paper about that we could go down and access the list of standards. And I said, I'm going to stop by because I'd like to see them myself. I'm kind of a standards guy. If my background is, I'm an FAA certified mechanic and repairman for United Technologies, and that's what we work around, specs and standards. I was surprised. I started leafing through that book, but you know, it gave me a good feeling because it's been my life for so long, 38 years, and you say 38 years of working. I'm a little older than that, but it's good to have standards because the reaction of each officer is then the same. And in my opinion, that's a big part of the game. It's part of the training, and it's part of the way you expect them to respond to a situation. And it's like Lou just said, it really doesn't matter what part of town they go to. They all respond in the same way, very professional. I, too, have had occasion with having to call for help several times, and the police are always the first ones there. And it's nice to know that they have standards, and they also are trained in the medical field. And if there is an emergency, that they can kind of control until the ambulance or the EMT people get there, that's a really good feeling. And I think that the fact that they're there and they're out there all the time and they're accessible all the time. I mean, we're welcome to stop in, and the chief has said that. We can stop in and talk to any of the people there, that anything we have on our mind, whether it's a traffic problem or whatever it is. But I have to say that in the 54 years I've lived here in town, it is improving all the time, even to the point of the presentation of their budget at budget time. It's so professional. I said the first time I saw the budget presented by Carl, I said, boy, you moved this bar. It was amazing the way he did such a profession. That's the kind of thing I was used to at the aircraft. And seeing that and to realize all the intricacies that he had to go through to get his point across, it was really good to see. And again, I guess just because I'm a standards guy, so I applaud you for having these standards and making them available, because I think it's important. And I also noticed, again, if you look to see if you have the latest revision, and I see all the revisions that are in there, and it's really something to see how you guys are raising the bar all the time too, and that makes me feel good, because as a department, they're keeping abreast to it. So I think it really is. I sometimes wonder, why are you coming back every 3 years? We've got a good department. But when I see the revisions that are there, and I see that you're making sure that they're stepping up to those things, terrific job both for you and for our chief and all the guys. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Frank Alamo.
Good evening. Chief Frank Alamo from Thompsonville Fire Department. Welcome to the Thompsonville section of Enfield. This is my third time doing this, so everybody stole a lot of my thunder and what I was going to talk about. But I've been with our department for 33 years, chief for about 5 or 6 years, and grew up here in Thompsonville and grew up with Tom and some of the people on the management staff. Tremendous guys, and what I want to talk about tonight is the officers in the street. And like Louis was saying, the problems we have here in Thompsonville, I feel so good because when our guys are out there and they go out, the police officers are right there with them. And if you thumbtack the activity in Enfield, if you take a look at where it all is, or most of it, you'll see it's down this end of town. Whether it's police, fire, EMS, I mean, the bulk of the activity is down here. I hate to talk about the Newtown tragedy and what's all on our mind. The president's here today, but Carl and his people were training in active shooter. I think last time you were here, you may have heard about that. So it's something they were ahead of the curve on. Nothing you ever want to think about, but they were already up on it, talking about it. As far back to the guys again, the department is involved in several regional law enforcement groups that they're very active in. Their police officers take on public relation assignments throughout the year, so they're out in the public helping. So all of you guys, like myself, we know we're only as good as the people that we have under us. And Carl and his management staff are very fortunate to have a great police department to guide. So thank you for coming. Maybe see you in 3 years. Maybe. Maybe.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, see you.
Buster Young.
Good evening and welcome to Enfield. I don't know what I can say because everything I was going to say, I have to repeat. They are a terrific police department. I have had incidents and worked with the chief. I'll give you an incident last year. Where I live, I have a park across the street that's very active at night. And when I call, there is kids in that park at 12 o'clock, and I've even have had kids in the park at 2 o'clock in the morning playing. There's a ball field there, there's playscapes. I call the Enfield Police Department. The dispatcher says, "What's the problem?" I explain it, and it seems in no time I see officers come, and they go in the park and get these kids out. Also, I can vouch that I have had EMS twice with my case with physical problems. And yes, the Enfield Police Department is there first. They come, they're very professional, they are businesslike, and they try to make you as comfortable until the EMS comes with the ambulance. Also, I had another incident last year in the park. There was this kid, had an ATV, and he was over on the other side of the park. There's 2 houses. He made Daytona racetrack and was doing it morning, noon, and even early evening. I was very skeptical calling the police department because I don't like to call, but I called one of my council people I knew. He heard me. He got a hold of the chief. The chief called me on the phone. I have known the chief since he's been that high because I was a baseball umpire. So he knows me well. He called me on the phone and he says, "Mr. Young, what's the problem?" I explained to the chief what it was. He says, "I'll have an officer come." An officer came to my house, questioned me what was going on. He says, "I'll go over and speak to the people." He went over. He couldn't get anybody at the house in the afternoon, in that early morning. So that wasn't the end of it. In the afternoon, I had a woman officer come, very nice, professional business. Asked me what was the problem. I explained to her what. She went over to the house, and I have to say, she resolved the problem. I do not have Daytona Beach racetrack anymore. I will second this police department. I think they're one of the most professional police department around. I will put them up against any police department in this state of Connecticut. They're very professional. They do their job, and they make sure we're safe here in Enfield. And I want to say, please, read Coretta. They deserve it, what they are getting. Thanks a lot, and have a safe trip home.
Thank you, sir.
Captain Craig Huntley.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Captain Craig Huntley. I'm the second in command of the Suffield Police Department. Chief, Sarge, I see that budget cuts have hit your panel as well. Last time I was here, I think you had 7. They've cut your staff, obviously. The other thing is I am very grateful that I don't have to follow Major Rick Fox because words just flow off his lip like silk. It's pretty amazing. The other thing, too, the last time I was here, I made note to the panel that I've known the Director of Public Safety and the Chief for well over 20 years. Their personal integrity, their character, and professionalism hasn't changed since then. 2 great people, and it just disseminates down through their staff. Listening to the public speak, I mean, you're really getting good testimony, and that's where it's coming from, the heart of Enfield. I do take a little hit when I hear them compare to the rest of the departments in the state coming from Suffield. I'd like to just say that Suffield has a great police department as well. And to put it in comparison, we have 20 officers to Enfield's 100. We've got approximately 13,000 compared to their 46,000 in population. However, we've got about 44 square miles to cover. Enfield's roughly 36. So with that said, I'd like to talk about mutual aid and some of the training that does go on in the Enfield Police Department. I think you've listened to some of the testimony earlier tonight, and they were talking about active shooting drills and obviously the tragic incident that's happened in Newtown. Well before the Newtown tragedy, the Enfield PD has been on the forefront of that training. I'm a use of force instructor. I use their facility as well to do training for our regional departments. And it's one of those things where not only they're doing it for themselves, but they've opened up their staff, their instructors to others that want to come in and get use of that training. Now, when it comes down to mutual aid, I've kind of given you the numbers. So we don't always have staff, and you know, budget cuts are here. So when we need mutual aid, we need somebody to come across that bridge, which is the 190. I don't know if you've done any exploring since you've been here. They come, and they come running. And any military or police officer will tell you, as you know, you're constantly checking your six, checking your back. Well, it's a big comfort to us knowing that somebody from Enfield, a well-trained professional police officer, is coming with tactics and the training to back them up for anything that we may have in Suffield. That's a big comfort. Just trying to think of some of the topics. I mean, a lot of people have already stolen a lot of the thunder already, but I think just listening from the public, you'll get a good understanding that they're continuing to move forward. They're always focused on excellence, keeping that standard, and their training is by far none one of the best in the area. So thank you, and enjoy your stay.
Thank you, Captain.
Michael Hillechu?
Good evening, Mike Hillechu from 31 Elm Meadows in Enfield. I've been a resident about 32 years. I want to start off with a couple of comments just as a citizen. I've had a number of occasions to call the police department and felt that the reasons for calling were not emergency reasons, so I would call the local number, and the officer who answered inevitably would encourage me to call 911 and state what the problem was. And even if it was kids throwing ice balls at the front door or whatever, the problems were taken care of in a very professional manner, and I was always confident that I could call 911 where other people might, as I said, I was hesitant to begin with. But I applaud the Enfield Police Department for seeking this accreditation. I've had experience in the military of inspecting and being inspected, of investigating and being investigated, and I applaud the fact that from the top to the bottom of the police department, they are committed to this accreditation, and you can see it in their daily activities and the professionalism that they have. I have complete confidence. They don't demand our respect, they earn it. And I am very pleased and applaud them, as I said, for going for the accreditation. I want to speak also as a member, as a staff person at Allied Rehabilitation Centers in Enfield. We provide services, day services and group home services to about 120 individuals with intellectual disabilities. And the police, EMS, and firemen who frequently respond to our locations, we're always confident that the police officers and the emergency responders will handle the situations at our location with the appropriate concern and respect for our population, which can be challenging for responders. Our folks see a lot of response, but they don't fear it. They have confidence in the people who are coming to our location because they're caring and professional and doing everything in their power to help with what can be very, very upsetting situations. So I speak in favor of accreditation, and I appreciate you coming to Enfield, and I appreciate the work that our Enfield Police Department does.
Thank you, sir.
Bill Lee?
Hi, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening.
William Lee, 6 Stony Brook Road, speaking as a resident and also a member of the council this evening. I just wanted to echo a lot of the sentiment that we're hearing tonight. Some very impressive themes that make me proud as a resident: professionalism and respect, and the challenges that our department faces have evolved even since I've been a member of the council. And I just want to point out how appreciative that I am as an elected official, that the leadership of the department has taken the time to explain to us the different challenges that they see emerging on the horizon, whether it's been different substance abuse issues that have been making their way across the country, obviously the challenges with school safety and building safety have been very pressing lately, but also things like gang activity, some of the challenges that we face having a kind of a suburban and urban neighborhoods, and how to deal with those in a very proactive manner. I think I would like to commend the chief for coming to the council members, well in advance, allowing us to plan as a policy making and budget making board. He's backed up all of the requests that we've seen over the years with statistics, with the theory on the police, strategy, law enforcement tactics, and so forth. So it's been an education for me as a public official, and it's been very rewarding in that regard to see our department grow and succeed. On a personal level, I want to also echo some of the sentiment in that the first response a role that our police department serves is very valued throughout the community. Had several occasions in the last several years for my family to take advantage of that service, and we're very thankful and grateful for their expertise. Have a safe travels. Godspeed.
Thank you.
Mayor Scott Copeland.
Good evening, Scott Copeland, 9 Allen Street. I'm a member of the town council and also serve as mayor. Scott and Rick, welcome again to the town of Enfield. It was my pleasure to meet you yesterday afternoon at the display of the equipment. I fully support the reaccreditation of our police department. The accreditation that the department has received over the years, I see it as a badge of honor for our police department. And they're very proud of their accomplishment in attaining that. And they continue to strive every year, probably every day, to make sure that what they're doing as a department they learn from, so that they can then attain the reaccreditation. So to them, it's also a challenge. It keeps our police department sharp and on the forefront of what's needed to protect our community. I believe our police department has the support of our community, of our business community, of our elected leaders, of our business community as well. And you've heard the different comments from folks here this evening. From our town council, you've got 5 council members here out of 11 representing both parties. And I would very comfortably say that all 11 members of our council, current and past, have been very supportive of the efforts of the police department. Our community, our police department goes above and beyond to involve the community, to allow them the opportunity to learn and to understand what their responsibilities are and how it impacts the day-to-day operations of the town. You may have heard about our very popular Citizens Police Academy, and it's always well attended, and it gives that insight to our community to learn firsthand what law enforcement is all about. Within the community, you saw the vehicle for our Explorers post, and you've probably had more conversations, but to take young folks and introduce them to law enforcement, and the post continues to grow and develops potentially future officers. We have support in our school system, and I know some of the school folks have signed up to speak as well. We have school resource officers and a to-be-soon implemented school security officers as well. Chief Preventure talked about the coordination role in emergency services, and our police department works very well with our fire departments and EMS. They also, you saw the regional cooperation with Crest and Metro Traffic, and have had the opportunity to be out there on a cold evening at a DUI checkpoint, and actually to see the appreciation of the community, even though they're being stopped and they're being asked what they were doing that evening, but they appreciate the presence on our streets. Training has always been something that our leadership in the police department has always asked for. You will hear from Major Fox from the Connecticut State Police, but Enfield was either the first or one of the first communities to do joint training with the Connecticut State Police on active shooter training, and that happened probably 4 or 5 years ago. They've involved elected officials for the town, elected officials for our school system. They brought in our community college, they brought in our Catholic schools as well, all to be trained or to understand the active shooter training and what actually occurs if an incident was to happen. They also handle the mundane. So as an elected official, we hear from the public all the time about speed enforcement, sightline issues, stop signs, traffic lights, parade permits, all of the mundane, but it's handled professionally, timely. They get back to us so that we can respond back to the public as well. So I'm sure what you've witnessed here in Enfield is you've got a community that's very proud of their police department, and we all fully support their reaccreditation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Major Alaric Fox.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Major Alaric J. Fox of the Connecticut State Police, which I would proudly identify as another CALEA-accredited organization. I am currently assigned as Chief of Staff to the Colonel of the State Police. Most importantly, for our purposes this evening, I am proud to identify myself to you as a friend, ally, and an ardent supporter of the Enfield Police Department. In my law enforcement career, which as of this June has spanned 30 years, I have served as a Willimantic, Connecticut police officer, as an FBI agent, and for the past 19 years as a Connecticut State Trooper. I am also an attorney involved in the training and civil defense of police officers. In these capacities, I have had the occasion to interact with members of this agency on occasions too numerous to count. Simply put, I cannot think of an instance where the men and women of this department have been anything other than professional, caring, and appropriate to my coworkers, and to our profession. While realizing that your efforts focus on the last 3 years, I would offer you the following examples of the professionalism that I speak of in both an historical and a present-day context. Several years ago, Troop C Tolland, which I was then the commanding lieutenant of, along with the Enfield Police Department, were jointly responsible for incident security at the execution of inmate Michael Ross, Connecticut's first and only execution in the past 60 years, which occurred at a prison at the border of my troop area and the town of Enfield. As you can imagine, this was a massive event. Several years ago, when I was the commanding officer of our training academy and a state police captain at the time, at the request and suggestion, at the initiation of Chief Safraza, the Connecticut State Police and the Enfield Police Department jointly engaged in active shooter training, even before such training was in vogue on a nationwide basis. More recently, in the summer of 2012, The Enfield Police Department and the Connecticut State Police, along with numerous other agencies, coordinated a highly successful law enforcement response to a large-scale international gathering of Outlaws Motorcycle Club held here in Enfield. There are numerous other examples on both a large and a small scale that I could cite for you of personnel management issues, training classes, and operational matters that have existed between our departments. They all end the same way, however, with the professionalism and commitment to excellence of the members of the Enfield Police Department. I would end my comments to you with the following anecdote, which I believe epitomizes the character of this agency, which you are here to assess. I have had the occasion to walk into the Enfield Police Department dressed as you see me tonight, and the response that I get from the desk officer, who may or may not know me, is, "Yes, sir. Can I help you?" I have had occasion to walk into the Enfield Police Department dressed as you are this evening, where the desk officer, who may or may not know me, has looked to me and said, "Yes, sir. Can I help you?" I have had occasion to walk into the Enfield Police Department when I have had business in this community wearing dirty, ripped jeans and an ugly t-shirt, and the desk officer, who may or may not know me, has looked to me and said, "Yes, sir. Can I help you?" It is my pleasure, as an official representative of the Connecticut State Police, on behalf of my agency, to offer my department's support in this reaccreditation bid. It is my honor as an individual to passionately do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Neville?
Evening.
Good evening.
Timothy Neville, 25 Jewel Street, Enfield. I come to you wearing three hats tonight to speak about our fine police department. One, I'm a 42-year resident of the town and a parent. I have 4 kids. I am a 40-year veteran of the school system as a teacher and as principal of the middle school. And currently, I'm a retired teacher and chairman of the school board. I think as a resident, the police department has always been responsive to my family and all the folks in my neighborhood. We've had a number of occasions, unfortunately, where there were some serious medical issues involved in our family, and always the first responder was the patrol officer, always professional, always incredibly sensitive to some very, very difficult situations. And that's gone on for the last 10 or 15 years. I just can't tell you how pleased we are and how safe we feel when we have to dial 911 and we have the caliber of people who show up. And so I just wanted to comment on that. As an educator and a 20-year principal of the middle school, I had a lot of occasions to meet many of the police officers, as well as the chief and some of his executive officers there over the course of the 20 years. We were involved in setting up the school resource program years ago. It's been a very, very effective program. Can't speak enough about the positive influence it's had in the schools and the relationship our kids have had with that program. I also served on the Juvenile Review Board as a member. Another program that was initiated here by one of our earlier chiefs. Tremendous influence on our kids and on the families. It was a step before going to court. It allowed us to do a lot of interventions that we would not normally have been able to do, and that's something Enfield's always been good at. They're out there on the forefront. They're trying some new things. They're trying to get involved in prevention. The other part of being in the school is that I've done accreditations in the school. And I know that whenever I brought that to my staff, there would be an audible groan because they knew how much work it was going to do. But we always knew what the benefit was going to do, was going to come out of that. Unless you look at what you're doing and compare yourself to your peers, you will never improve. If you do what you've always done, you will get what you always have gotten. And I think the accreditation process is incredibly important. The fact that they stuck with it, got it the first time, and now are staying online with it, I can't applaud them enough. I know what it takes. I know how important it is. And having been there, at least on our side and on your side, because I've gone out and done a lot of school systems, I know how much work it is, but it's important. And these guys, I think, have taken on that challenge, and I applaud them for it. And finally, as the Board of Ed Chair, I'm kind of dealing at a different level here. As somebody mentioned before, we're dealing with the security issues. And I think the police department has showed a great deal of leadership, including the public safety folks, in terms of helping us get to where we needed to be. And I think a lot of the things we've done reluctantly. We wish we weren't here. Okay, that's some of the things that we've come up with. But I think we've worked together. You know, we've had our arguments, we've gotten through this whole thing, but I think all for the same purpose, and it was all a positive purpose. And I think we all walked away with a product that I think, again, we wish the world wasn't the way it is, but we feel comfortable with what's going on. And as a final thing, I want to applaud them for the active shooter program. I had no idea what that was until I went and took a trip in a patrol car to one of the active shooter activities they had here, and it was an eye-opener. The professionalism of our police officers, the planning, I know what went into that, was just incredible, and it made me feel a lot safer knowing that our folks were proactive and had done a great deal of planning to deal with almost any kind of scenario that would come up. So I'm happy to be here to say, you know, well done, keep it up, and I applaud them for taking on this challenge, and I thank you folks for coming out and getting involved in it.
Thank you, sir.
Jeffrey Schuman.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Jeffrey Schuman. I'm the superintendent of schools. I became superintendent of schools in July, so I've been in town for 9 months, so I'm going to offer you a very fresh and not a very extensive perspective on the Enfield Police Department just in the short time that I've been here. First of all, to pick up on Mr. Neville's comments about accreditation. You know, in the school system, we value accreditation. We're accredited by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. It's a very rigorous process. We participate in it. We also go out and help other districts do it. Anytime you get involved in deep self-reflection, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to look at who you are, look in the mirror, and really be critical about the things that you do. And so I applaud the police department because they have taken on the challenge of looking at themselves and letting others look at themselves, opening their doors to letting other people take a look at them. And they realize that the only way to become better is to really expose yourself and ask for good, honest, critical feedback from others. And so they're doing that, and I wish them the very best, and I know they're going to be successful. Early on, upon arriving in town, I received a call from the chief, and he invited myself and my deputy, who you'll hear from shortly, to come over to his office. And he had his senior leadership in the office, and we spent some time. And it was, you know, I didn't know any of those folks, and they didn't know me. And but it was very early on that he reached out and said, you know, we need to establish a relationship. The relationship between the school system and the police department is going to be critical for everyone's success in this community. And so as any first meeting goes, it's a little feeling out, a little awkward, and things work on. But you got a feeling of confidence. You got a feeling of professionalism with the gentlemen that were in the room. And you just knew that even though you didn't know them very well, you could trust them and you were going to build a strong relationship. And that relationship has grown. It's grown through incidents. It's gone through incidents where they've had to respond in our schools, where we've had to call for help, where they've sought out our advice on things to do. And we've talked and talked and talked, and the more we talk now, it's first name basis, it's very friendly, and it's still very professional, and we're very confident in each other, and I'm certainly very confident in their ability. We have some of their officers in our schools, the school resource officers. They're some of the most valuable people we have. I mean, they're there for our students. They become part of our culture. Our students rely on them. Our families rely on them. They're trusted. They know how to enforce the law. They know how to protect people. But they also know how to provide services and additional counseling and resources to the families and students that reach out to them. I don't know what we would do if we didn't have them there. You know, they're so proactive in what they do, and they also bring that level of respect to our buildings and to themselves. So they've been there. They respond, and we have 3 officers. They're scheduled at our 2 high schools and our middle school, but they also have responsibilities to our other schools, our other 7 schools in town. So if something happens at one of the schools that they're not at, they immediately hop in the car and they go over to that school, and a lot of times we meet them there, and they come in, you know, from their school. They've left, they've come, they've now established themselves in a new place. They hit the ground running. They've got relationships with people in multiple buildings, so they can come in and get the work done, which is huge. We all know how the world changed last December. It changed radically in moments. Things were happening by the moment, and we were in contact with the chief and his folks. They immediately became a presence in our school. We didn't know what the impact was going to be, and we still really don't know going forward. We're still working through it. The country's working through it. But our police department reacted in moments. They said, we're going to come out, we're going to be present in your schools, we're going to get folks out there, we're going to keep people present. It was right before Christmas break. We had about 7, 9, 10 days of school to go. They were there in our schools, and over the break we talked about it. I said, you know, it's important if you can, and they said, we certainly will, be present in your schools when the students return. And we'll stay present until we get this thing figured out. We had a pep rally scheduled at our high school. We had some inkling there was going to be some problems, and it was right after December 14th. The chief was there and his staff was there, and they stayed for the whole pep rally. They watched, they participated, they were visible, and it just gave everybody a real reassuring feeling that they were on board and they were ready to help out. And that shows you the kind of folks they are. You know, they didn't have to be there that morning. But they came out in force, they came out in presence. For the last 15 weeks, we've been meeting every Wednesday morning trying to figure out how we're going to make our schools safer and better for our students and our staff. So as I talked about building that relationship, when you see someone on a weekly basis now, every week, and you're working for a common good, that relationship has grown hugely. With lots of members of his department, and it's becoming very solid. Mr. Neville talked about their active shooter drill that they did for us on a Saturday morning, and so we came in on a Saturday morning after a long week of work, and they put on a drill for us, and so we were going through it, and we realized it was a drill, and it was staged, but it was staged well. It was real, it was believable, but you went through the whole thing, and they gave us a good introduction, and they did the drill, they brought us back, they did a nice debrief with us, but it wasn't maybe for another 24 hours later till I really started reflecting on what I saw and the reality of it. And so their work in 4 hours Saturday morning took 24 hours to sink into my head. But once it did, I started to understand a bit different picture, a different idea of what it takes to protect schools, what it takes to protect our students, and what we're going to have to do moving forward. And so their exercise, as well planned as it was, finally sunk in. And you finally start to understand what their level of expertise is in this area. We have a part of our mission statement that says we'll provide a safe, a nurturing, and an academically challenging environment. And I can be a professional in the back too. Nurturing and an academically challenging environment I'm good at. But they're the best at the safety part. And so it's going to be a partnership as we move forward to accomplish our mission, and we're confident that they're going to help us with it. They have been nothing but professional and confident in everything they do. Everywhere they show up, you know that they're on board, they're fully trained, and they're ready to do their work. So on behalf of the school system, I'm privileged to give our unconditional support for their accreditation and for their continued work in providing the safety and security of our community. Thank you.
Chris Drezek.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chris Drezek, the Deputy Superintendent of Schools, and the previous two speakers stole everything I was going to tell you, so I'll try to make it a little bit more personal than that. Like Dr. Schuman mentioned, he's been here for 9 months. I've had the fortunate pleasure of being here since 2004. And one of the things that was consistent when you heard from Dr. Schuman, you heard from Chairman Neville, and you also heard from Mayor Copin, I have a little bit of a different role when it comes to our relationship with the police department, and I truly view our police department between the Enfield Public Schools and the Enfield PD as really as a partnership. It's not just another town department where if you needed another service somewhere in town, we might call someone and see if they can help us out. It really is a constant, as Dr. Schuman alluded to lately with recent events, that there is a constant dialogue between us. But that didn't just start back in December. That's been in my close to 9 years here in the district. That's something that's been continuous. And I have to applaud and finally have an opportunity publicly to say appreciation that I have personally for the chief and his command staff, not just with Deputy Chief Collins and with Captain Hall and Captain Golden and the Public Safety Director, Mr. Bromson. It gets to a point where if anything happens in our schools, it's a matter of seconds before either I'm on the phone with them and vice versa. To the point where actually, in recent months we've been spending a lot more time together. In the rare event that I'm home in the evening and my cell phone rings, my youngest daughter says, "It's Captain Hall again," because they can read his name on my cell phone. But when we talk about a partnership, there's a certain level of comfort that I have knowing that, in the middle of the night, and if an event happens, the first phone call that we may get from the police department is going to be an immediate response, but it's also a two-way street. In the event that we ever need anything as a school system, as Dr. Schuman alluded to earlier, we're good at the schools part. The safety and security piece, we're learning, but we're learning with the assistance of the gentleman that I mentioned earlier. And the comforting fact is that even prior to December, if there was something we weren't aware of, or just something that fell under the realm of possibly in law enforcement that we had a question or concern on, we never had a doubt in our mind to pick up the phone, either to call the chief or to call Gary and say, "We don't know what to do with this. Can you help us out?" It was never, "We're too busy. We can't help you out." It's always, some cases, let's send an officer over there just in case to be safe. And that's reassuring not only for us, but I can also speak on behalf of really as the district, that when you walk through our schools, our people do feel safe. And our people feel safe because of the presence that we have from the police department. I'm going to try to hit the areas that they didn't hit on me, so I apologize for that. One of the things that we've talked a lot about, obviously, is with the measures regarding school security that we're beginning to engage in. And as Dr. Schuman mentioned, it's been 15 weeks that we've been having these discussions, and we're prepared to have these discussions for a long time to come. Going into this as school system or school administrators, we're not expertise in this area. And there's a little bit of apprehension when our world changes about what our lives are going to be like going forward. I can tell you from personal experience being in those meetings every single week that I have the confidence that we're not only going to do it, whatever measures we take that we're going to do well because of the gentlemen in the police department that are here before you this evening. It's a new, and I don't want to say area of expertise for us, but it's a new responsibility that we have in a different light. But we wouldn't have the confidence in going into an endeavor like school security if we didn't have the department behind us helping us out. And I know Mr. Neville mentioned that he's a former member of the Juvenile Review Board. I'm actually on the Juvenile Review Board, and I can tell you that the partnership that we have with the police department, not just in the security realm, but also in an area like the JRB, it helps us notice the issues that we have to address as a system with the assistance of using an avenue like that. And it's something that the partnerships that are really created between youth services and the community outreach, but if you notice, it's through the police department. It's the coordination through the police department and Officer George who really got that program up and running and continuously runs on a basis that's beneficial for all of us. And the last thing I just want to hit, all of us talking about the accreditation process, and something that we reflect on a lot is, and I'm sure you do in your line of work as well, you talk to colleagues. And you can see here tonight there's members of the state police that were here. We also on the school side talk to our colleagues about what we do on a daily basis and the interactions that we have. And I got to tell you, when I talk to colleagues who are in similar roles in other towns, maybe they're not as fortunate as I am to know that if there's ever an event, all I have to do, that I have the cell phone numbers of the command staff of the Enfield Police Department, and I know in a split second if I need something, those guys are going to be there. And they're not going to ask questions. They're going to do whatever it is they need to do to make sure that the system's taken care of and that our kids are safe. So on behalf of everyone else that I've heard speak tonight, I want to give my unconditional support behind this accreditation process. I'm sorry if I repeated anything, but like I said, I shouldn't have went last. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dominic Alimo.
Good evening. My name is Dominic Alimo. I live at 16 New Street in Enfield, and I'm in the Thompsonville section of town. And you've heard Thompsonville mentioned quite a few times tonight of how important it is that built this town. And I think you're going to hear what I'll bring you is an update to some of the horror stories you've heard, what it was and what it is now. I'd like to take a few minutes this evening to tell you about the good things the police department is doing. Under the leadership of Chief Carl Sparazza, the Enfield Police Department has significantly improved the quality of life here in town, particularly in the Thompsonville section. Back in the 1990s, Thompsonville was a rundown, crime-ridden neighborhood dominated by drug dealing and drug lairs
Back at that time, the neighborhood was being invaded by vicious drug gangs from Hartford and Springfield, such as the Latin Kings, prostitution, loitering, drug dealing with significant quality of life issues. As late as 2005, there were significant problems with heroin trafficking downtown. Under the leadership of Chief Sperazza, the Enfield Police Department took significant steps to address these issues, which have included increasing the police visibility downtown, dedicating officers to an undercover narcotics squad and increased traffic enforcement. Although not most popular, the Enfield Police Department's focus on enhanced traffic enforcement was yielded significant results in combating the undercover drug trade here in town. Enfield Police Department has seized tens of thousands of dollars in drugs from drug dealers and kept them off the streets. Admittingly, drugs remain a problem in Thompsonville, but much of this issue is due to the neighborhood's status as a low-rent district. Nevertheless, the Enfield Police Department does the best it can with the resources it has, particularly in these difficult economic times. Another improvement that occurred in the recent years was an execution of an agreement between the town and the Board of Education allowing drug-sniffing dogs into the Enfield public schools. In the wake of the Newtown shooting, everyone is talking the dangers that the firearms pose with children. But in reality, is that the underage drinking and drug abuse is a much more immediate and menacing danger to our kids. Speaking of Newtown, I just want to note that the Enfield Police Department has been a leader in conductive active shooter training. For the past 6 years, Enfield Police Department has been conducting active shooter drills at local businesses and schools, including Mass Mutual, Rockville Bank, Asnutty Community College, Enfield High School. Among municipal police departments, Enfield is uniquely prepared for this threat and recognized years ago that immediate neutralization is the only way to address an active shooter. In terms of the challenges that face Enfield Police, I think they are the industry-wide challenges that face most police departments in America. One of the big challenges facing the police department is recruitment and retention. It is difficult to find candidates who pass the physical and written tests and background checks and interviews. At this time, the department has found it difficult to retain young officers, some of whom move into big city police departments seeking more excitement. Another challenge that the police department faces is recent efforts to legalize marijuana. Here in Connecticut, possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana has been decriminalized, and the legislature has legalized medical marijuana. These law changes make it harder for police departments to track down drug trade. Nevertheless, given Enfield's size, population, diversity, and development nature, Enfield Police do a first-rate job defending the police order and protecting the lives of town residents. I hope you will consider extending the Enfield Police Department's accreditation. Thank you. I'd also like to add, you've heard many times people, professionals in this room tonight have said to you how easy it is and available to reach Chief Sperazza or the assistant chief or his captains. But everywhere he goes, whether it's the town council, a small group of people, a big group of people, his ending is always, call me, I'm available. So he's available to every citizen in this town day in and day out. And he's done a wonderful job, and I hope I gave you a better insight of Thompsonville. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
James Brislin.
Good evening, sirs. My name is James Brislin. I am a resident of Enfield. I live in the Sherwood Manor section of town, lifelong resident, except, of course, for my college years. And I come before you this evening to speak in favor of the reaccreditation of the Enfield Police Department. It is my belief that the Enfield Police Department is probably one of the finest police agencies here in the state, particularly for a suburb of Enfield size, given the population and resources available to it. You will find few, if any, police agencies of comparable competence and ability. And I know that your focus is on recent years, so I guess I'll start with recent years. Just a couple of things that have happened. The Enfield Police Department was very much behind that I thought were extraordinary. The first is like 2 or 3 years ago. If you go back to 2008, there was a homicide here in town of a girl by the name of Ashley Peoples. And she actually was killed in Hartford, and her body was dumped here in town. Her murderer, who was her ex-boyfriend, basically skipped town and disappeared off the face of the earth. The Enfield Police Department partnered with the television show America's Most Wanted, and within 48 hours of airing a segment on Daryl Crenshaw, one of his cellmates in Mexico, he was apparently being jailed for some petty crime in Mexico. One of his cellmates in Mexico turned him in, and he was extradited to the United States to face trial. I mean, for a small town / medium-sized suburb like Enfield, to catch that kind of a criminal, I think is pretty impressive. Another incident that I would cite in recent years that's more recent is the conclusion of the investigation into the theft of drugs at Eli Lilly on Freshwater Boulevard. The Eli Lilly facility, I believe it's a distribution center on Freshwater Boulevard, was targeted by professional thieves who pulled up to the place in a tractor-trailer and cut holes into the roof. I mean, this is Mission Impossible type of stuff. Lowered themselves in. Apparently, they had inside sources about where all the security cameras and lasers, motion detection lasers were placed, and were able to make off with like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of pharmaceuticals in a tractor-trailer. The police department partnered with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the state police, and working together with the U.S. Attorney's Office, ultimately brought to justice 2 men from Miami who had been engaging in these professional heists all over the country. And but it was the heist in Enfield that got them caught, because they left behind a water bottle with one of their fingerprints on it. So that level of just ground, foot level detective work, finding the water bottle, finding the fingerprint, and then connecting it to the U.S. Attorney's Office into a national scheme was pretty impressive. As well, I do want to say that as far as civil rights are concerned, I have found the Enfield Police Department to be very, very good, very, very by the book in their handling of traffic stops and of civil rights. And this is something that I have some knowledge of, because by day I'm a law student. I'm an evening law student in my 4th year at Western New England up in Springfield, and in that capacity, as a student attorney, I've dealt with civil rights cases in the administrative agency context, including some involving municipal police departments in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And so I've seen case files with pretty egregious abuses in them. Those kind of things don't happen in Enfield because there are policies and procedures, and there's discipline that's enforced across the board. I myself have at times been subjected to traffic stop, and I've always found that Enfield's officers were polite, courteous, and fair in how they handled me, and that says a lot, because often as well, the consistent traffic enforcement and many of these traffic stops have been the gateway to discovering more crimes here in town, particularly in the drug arena. I also would like to just speak in favor as well of the quality of customer service overall provided by the police department. When you call 911, and we've had more than our share of medical calls at my house, often it's the police department that shows up first, and that's been crucial over all the years. Does the department face challenges? Of course it does, but I think those challenges are the same challenges faced by police departments across the state. And I'll give you a few examples. As you gentlemen no doubt are aware, following the election of Barack Obama in 2008, you have had a enormous demand for pistol permits The number of applications for pistol permits have jumped tremendously, and not without justification, given some of the concerns about pending gun legislation, and obviously the legislation recently passed by the legislature. Well, the police department needs to process those permits, and the detectives who need to do the background checks for those permits are the same detectives investigating Eli Lilly and Daryl Crenshaw, the murder of Ashley Peoples. And so at times there have been a backlog, but every police department throughout the state has had this problem. However, I will credit the Enfield Police Department and their handling of my pistol permit application, because now they're talking about, of course, mental health and more thorough background checks. Way before this was on the national radar, pre-Newtown, I have to say, they called my parents, who I live with. They called my neighbors. They called my employer, and they conducted a thorough, and they interviewed me in person. They conducted a thorough check to see whether or not I was a suitable individual to be given a pistol permit. And I think particularly when you go back 3 years before the awareness we have now, that's pretty impressive given the many responsibilities of the department. So in conclusion, I just want to thank you for hearing me out this evening, and state that I hope that you will renew the department's accreditation.
Thank you.
Chief report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before I start, let me tell you that I have a tremor in my left hand, sometimes the right hand, sometimes the head. I don't want you to go back feeling guilty that you made this guy so nervous that he shook all over. I have a special feeling for Enfield. My great-grandmother and grandfather came from Ireland, settled in Enfield, brought their whole family up in Enfield, and I've brought my family up in Enfield. The feeling towards Enfield has always been the same. I've got the love of Enfield in my body and bones. I also must tell you that I am the retired police chief for the town of Enfield. And I suppose when I say that, you think to yourself, well, this guy will be in here singing the praises for the department, and I probably will. But I think at the same time, you've got to realize the other side of the coin is that I could be their worst critic at the same time if I thought they weren't doing a job. I started the accreditation, and I'm glad to see how it's progressed along the route. I'd have to tell you that I think the chief of police does a great job. His administrative team of deputy chief and the captains all work together and to do a fine job. I think the accreditation team has done an excellent job, and I think the rest of the department, the lieutenants, sergeants, patrolmen, all take an example from the administrative group and the accreditation group, and they all do a fine job. You've listened tonight to the people here, and I can assure you from people that stop me on the street that this is the feeling of almost all the people in the town of Enfield. They all believe and know that they have a great department. In conclusion, I'm not going on. I know you've had a long night. I think everybody has got up and praised the department and all. I'd tell you that when you go back, I really think that, and ask you to recommend that they be reaccredited. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone else here like to speak that did not sign in at this time? I want to take the time to thank each and every one of you for coming out. I know some people have already left, but I know speaking for the chief, it means a lot when people come out and to these things. People's times are limited, but I really appreciate you coming out. I really appreciate your comments, and thank you.
That concludes the hearing. Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.